Hey everyone, my name's Calvin, which you would know if you read my channel title. Today I'm going to be talking about how I afford and take care of animals as a teenager. I do want to make a quick disclaimer. All of the animals are in my room. I completely take care of them and I pay for them to the best of my ability. I do turn to my parents occasionally. They have paid for 10% at most. I am lucky enough to have a financially stable family, and I know that not everyone has that luxury. The animals I have are a Crested Gecko, which is that tank. I have 4 fish tanks, and I have a tarantula, so that's the quick content warning. There will be footage of my tarantula. Firstly, we will be talking about my Crested Gecko fig. This is my Crested Gecko figs enclosure. It's all bioactive. It's a 18 by 18 by 24 Exoterra fig, this tank, and that water dish, along with some really crappy substrate, came from Craigslist for 60 bucks. He was a Christmas present, and while I do not support giving animals as gifts, my parents knew that I had wanted one for a long time, and that's how he ended up with me. It's all bioactive, and it has been that way since he moved in. There are some of the springtails, reptile jungle floor something, and just normal potting soil I got from Home Depot. These plants were also from Home Depot. It was 4 Florida Beauty plants for, I want to say, like under $11. This plant, I think it's a little fill, but I'm not sure about that. And the one in the back, that's a golden pothos. Those were both part of a Crested Gecko deal from Josh's Frogs. I've had him since December 28th of last year. Today is December 3rd, so it's almost been a year since I've had him. So this is Fig, my Crested Gecko. It was a rehome from a lady who had not meant to breed her geckos, but ended up doing so. So I do not know his morph. He's been in my care for about a year. Oop. It is not needed for Crested Geckos to have water dishes. They get their water from drops on the leaves, but I like him to have one because springtails, which are the cleanup crew in his terrarium, or his vivarium, are semi-aquatic, so I like for them to have the option to swim around if they need to. For feeding him, I buy the Crested Gecko diet from a local pet store. That's about $8, and the little like 7-ounce bag or so feeds him for probably 6 months or more. His water cup, and not water, his food cup, with, it's just like a 2-ounce plastic cup, is 99 cents on Josh's Frogs. While you can, just throw it away and put a new one in. Instead, I just reuse and wash out his food cup and then just put it back. His substrate was a mixture of a lot of things. I have rainforest substrate here, which is from Exoterra. I also have creature soil that was used for my tarantula, but I did put some of that in there. I also used topsoil that was just left over from my dad's garden. His substrate right now as it is probably costs less than $10. Everything else is wood that I have specifically doctored from outside, and then an antler that my dad had, and then just a piece of wood that was in my room for some reason. The best advice I have for someone who's a teenager who wants to afford their own animals is really use Craigslist and similar services to the best of your ability. Craigslist is a website here in the USA where you can post ads and things for service and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure there are similar things in like Canada and the UK. That's how I got his lamp fixture, which I actually will talk about now. So Crested Geckos do not need light. My room stays at about a constant 68 degrees, which is just a little too cold for Crested Geckos. It's certainly livable, but not ideal. So he does have a pretty weak heat lamp at the top, so he can go sit on those sticks if he needs to, if he feels cold. And there's a UVB lamp for the plants. I bought the dome for probably 40 bucks. Well, no, I bought the dome for 30, and the red heat lamp for 10, and then I got the UVB lamp from Craigslist for free. Really, the best thing you can do is, when you have money, buy as much of the supplies as you know you'll need in the future. I have multiple buckets of things. I'd have like random wood, a lot of extra hydroton and gravel, and then just a bunch of like substrate and stuff like that, so that I can supplement as time goes on when I don't have as much money as I did have when I bought that stuff. Sorry, I don't know what Fig's doing, but he's probably fine. Another thing that I will always be a huge supporter of is buying things from Savers and other thrift stores like that. Like, a lot of my fish tank decorations come from little, like, Scentsy burners if you, like, treat them beforehand so they're not dirty. And you can always use wood and sticks and leaves and things like that from outside. All of his leaf litter came from outside. You just have to boil it beforehand. You can look up a lot of tutorials about how to prepare wood. But yeah, that's about as much as I can get for Fig. This is my 20-gallon long community tank. There are Gardneri keelyfish, guppies, albino cories, and one pygmy cory because the rest of his school died. So I've had these fish for the longest out of everyone. This tank, the whole tank came from my friend Lucian, who gave them to me for free. It came with 6 keelies, as well as the substrate and this piece of wood. Use friends, Craigslist, people who are just trying to get rid of things to the best of your abilities, because you can get something for free. Feeding fish is ridiculously cheap. This thing of food was probably like $4, and then this is $10. It has flakes, granules, and brine shrimp. It's not the highest of quality. I also do weekly bloodworms. Bloodworms are a little bit more expensive. They're probably $8 to $11. They just come in like frozen little packets. That takes one of the days. This will probably keep my fish fed for, I want to say, upwards of a year. Buying filter media is pretty expensive, so I just rinse my filter media and buy loose bags of it and then just make my own, which is super cheap. It's really easy. You just have to, again, look up the video. And then next to this tank is my 5-gallon beta. My beta's not 5 gallons, but the tank is. This one also came for free from Lucian. That's Mr. Clementine. He's alright. These plants, this one is... It was a silk plant that I bought for $6 from Petco. I don't love to support Petco, but sometimes I have to just because I don't have a lot of other options. Sand is play sand that I rinsed from Home Depot. You can get huge amounts of play sand. It does take a while to rinse, and it's very inconvenient, but that's okay. This tank overall has a monthly cost of like less than $1. And then it's also using an Aquarium filter for 10-gallon tanks. It's super low flow just because Clementine has a really hard time swimming. He's a sweetheart. So that's that tank. This is another 5-gallon beta tank. That's Mr. Frank Sinatra. He is huge. If you look at the size of my hand compared to him. He's my most social fish. He always comes to the front when I'm here. He came to me for free as well. You'll find a lot of people trying to rehome betas because a lot of people buy betas as an ornamental animal and don't actually know how to take care of them correctly. That's kind of how it happened for me. His previous owner, her big tank for him, which was actually just 3.5 gallons, broke, so he was in this, which is now just a really crappy terrarium. Again, Scentsy burners, that was probably less than $1 at Savers. This little decoration came to me with him for free. This plant was less than $2 at Petco. His filter came from Walmart for probably $12 to $15, and he's very happy. This is my 55-gallon goldfish and baby guppy tank. It does not have a filter, which is really awful for goldfish, and I admit that, but I do 50% water changes every 3 days, which seems to keep just fine. People would argue a lot with keeping 3 goldfish and like over 20 baby guppies just because the baby guppies will be eaten, but that's part of the point, keeping the population I have down just because my female guppies give birth so often. This tank will not belong to me permanently. I bought it for school, which I will talk about right now. This 55-gallon tank has been completely free for me personally. I am co-leading a class at my school surrounding aquaponics, which is the rearing of aquatic life using alongside a hydroponics system. So basically that means keeping aquatic life and having their water be filtered by like the roots of plants, thus the plants having nutrition from the waste of the fish. So it's like a symbiotic and sustainable system. Basically how this happened was I found this tank itself, 55 gallon for $30 because this lady was downsizing on Craigslist. It should be at the school, but there are some complications, so it's just in my room temporarily, and I'm just taking care of it until we can move it back to the school. We bought one, say like 50-pound or something like that, bag of pea gravel, and then 150-pound of river rocks, and then used that as a substrate. So each of those bags was probably like $12 once more. The 3 goldfish are, I'm pretty sure, just normal fancy goldfish. They're about 6 inches long, and I got them for free on Craigslist. A lady did not know how big they would get and needed to rehome them. They were living together in a 10-gallon tank, which is really bad. The plants are reptile plants that again came with fig. It's wood that we found out by the river and boiled and treated. So that all came for free. There are some small Scentsy burners, again, that came for less than $1 from Savers. There's an air stone, which I got for $17, I think. Again, I was reimbursed by my school. I feed them just spinach and leaves, not just leaves, but like spinach and lettuce and other leafy greens like that. I just use a veggie clip that I got for like $1 off of Josh's Frogs. They will occasionally eat one of the baby guppies, but it's rare. They're not super hungry yet. I got them about 2 weeks ago, so they still have a slight new tank syndrome.
Sorry.
Ugh. Right now I'm going to be talking about my tarantula and showing her, so if that's something that scares you or that you don't want to look at, you can exit this video. This is my Bihomori, or Mexican red knee tarantula. Her name is Eleanor. This little tank along with her, that water bowl, that hide, and all of this substrate came for free from one of my teachers, which I will talk about right now. So one of my parents' biggest reservations about me getting reptiles and invertebrates and stuff is that most of them do eat insects, which they don't love, mostly because my mom says that she doesn't want an ecosystem living in our house. But, so I have a teacher named Jeff. I guess I shouldn't say his name. I have a teacher who is a huge supporter of me and my passions, and he had a tarantula that he didn't want. He bought a blue bottle tarantula, which is an old world tarantula that's super like expensive and beautiful, and his friend accidentally crushed it when it was just a sling, which is a baby spiderling sling, and repaid him with giving him a Mexican red knee, which is one of the most popular tarantulas in the pet trade. He took care of her, obviously, but he just didn't love having her, and he knew that I would. Last year when he told me that I could have her, I was like, there's no way my parents would ever let that happen. And then earlier this year, I finally convinced them, just saying that I would just go pick up 2 crickets a week, feed them to her, be done, that's all she needs. And really that's true. So if you're looking for a super low maintenance and cheap pets, tarantulas are a great option just because they do need, or I guess not need, there's a lot of discourse about this, but they are happy in a super small environment just because they like the sanctity of it and they don't need a lot of stimulation. I just feed her 2 crickets a week. It's like 40 cents for both of them. I throw one in there, and if she eats it, then I throw the other one in too. So she's a great option for a low maintenance pet. Tarantulas have been reported to go 3 years without eating. That's obviously like so far under the ideal. If you can feed them once a week or once every 2 weeks, that's found to be the best amount of food for a tarantula. They can go really long with eating. They shouldn't have to, but if they need to, that's okay. Leaving them home alone for traveling is pretty fine as long as it's in shorter intervals. Tarantulas are a great option for people who want a low maintenance pet. That's how I personally pay for all of my fish. All of my animals. In conclusion, really the most expensive animal I own is probably my fish. If I had bought all of this stuff new, then I would not be able to afford them. But because I know how to use Craigslist a lot and I have contacts within that from people who know that I will take their extra supplies and that I am knowledgeable in fish and reptiles and invertebrates, they know to send a lot of their stuff for me, so we have like good discounts and deals, and I like have contacts, which is kind of, it's a little sketchy. Yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. Another thing is just using things from your environment for enrichment in your tanks. Enrichment is the unnecessary, I think it's necessary, decorations and things for your animals. So like using wood that you find outside, leaves, moss that you've treated and rinsed and sanitized for your tanks. And then also buying things in bulk is really helpful, just like substrate, gravel, filter media, anything like that. Those are my best tips I have for you. Hope you have a good day.